Hello, my name is Clarence Stevens. I'm with Natural Wonders. I'm the guest leader for this virtual walk today, Naturalist Walk, on behalf of the Sackville Rivers Association and for snow days for the Sackville Business Association. So right now we're standing at one entrance of the trail, the Glendale entrance. There's a bus stop right here if anyone needs to catch a bus to reach the park. It's probably the easiest access point for bus riders. The main trail is 3.3 kilometers long. So we're going to take you along this trail and introduce you to some of the exciting things to see along this trail. This is actually one of my favorite winter trails to walk. You'll find out why. Right behind me, we have some trembling aspen trees, and on the other side of the trail, there are some gray birch trees as well, and also with the trembling aspens. We'll take a closer look at gray birches in a few minutes, but that sort of combination is one of the 9 habitats that we find along the Greenway here. And that combination is one of the things that we see often after a fire. So this kind of tells us a story that there must have been a small fire here sometime in the past to get that type of habitat springing up. These aspen trees shoot up after fires, and one thing that's really interesting about them is there's only actually one tree there, one individual tree. The rest are all clones of the original tree. So trembling aspens will colonize a new area, and then they'll put up a whole bunch of clones of each other. Some of the oldest clone colonies in the world are dated around 8,000 years of trembling aspens, so 8,000 years old. So who knows how long this colony's been here or how long it'll be here. Maybe thousands of years after we're gone even. So it's kind of exciting, to think that cloning technology is still something that we humans are struggling with. But here's a tree that figured it out thousands of years ago. This example of a couple of the gray birches that we just mentioned, they're right next to the aspens, but a little hard to get both in one shot. So we'll spread out the shot a little bit. Examples of the gray birch that we just mentioned that are grown in association with aspens. They're very similar to the white birch. They can easily be identified by their bark. It's not quite as bright as the white birch, it's grayer. And of course, in the summertime, the leaves are more tapered towards the tip. Sometimes you can look on the ground and find some of the leaves. I don't see one immediately in my but if we did switch around here a little bit, there's a good chance of finding some of the leaves. So as we come along from Glendale, you'll come to an area of the path where there's high railings, and that's because there's a stream that comes in that joins the Little Sackville. And this is often a great spot where people stop to watch minnows. So it's a good minnow watching spot. It's because of the extra nutrients that are being brought in, the converging of the stream with the river to create extra oxygen, that sort of thing as well. So it's kind of a cool spot. Here we are coming off of Alder, the Alder Street entrance into the park. And I wanted to talk about this tree. This is our only native evergreen species that loses all its needles in the wintertime. So it's not really an evergreen in that sense. It belongs to the evergreen family, but it's deciduous, which basically just means it drops its needles. This is the tamarack, and tamaracks normally grow in wetlands and especially bogs. So there's only a few. This little side spur trail is the only place in the whole park where you can find any tamaracks left. So this was obviously a bit of a bog or a wetland at one point, and just a few of these trees are still surviving here. Everywhere, nowhere else in the park can they be found, or they died out as the area became drier and less of a bog. So when we started off this virtual walk, you could hear a fair bit of traffic at the beginning of the trail entrances, but one of the nice things about walking this trail you don't have to get in very far until the traffic noise is disguised by running, bubbling water. We have a little riffle here, which is great. One of the spots that you often see people just standing, just listening to the water, relaxing, letting that stress go away. So another great thing about this trail. So one of the things you'll notice along this trail, there's a lot of tree species. There's over 40 species of trees found here in the park, and 38 of those can easily be seen just walking along the trail. I'm going to point out a couple here. We have hemlocks growing here in the park. They are only native species with short, flat leaves. And fir, balsam fir, is our only native species with long, flat needles. Growing next to these, we have a red spruce, over here. A red spruce over here. And one of the things you can do as you go along, you can feel the different needles. The hemlocks and the firs are very soft feeling. If you kind of squeeze the spruces right away, you'll notice they have a prickly feel to them. So it's kind of, a kind of fun thing you can do. They all have a bit of a distinct smell as well. The firs smell a lot like a Christmas tree, because a lot of our Christmas trees are fir. The white spruces have kind of a skunky smell. The red spruces have kind of an orange peeling smell. So, something fun to do as you go along. Touch the different trees, touch the different needles, and give them a sniff, see what else you might discover. So the evergreen trees aren't the only species that can be identified in the wintertime. A lot of our native species, in fact, all of them can be identified during the winter months. A lot of them, we look at the buds to identify them. Does every species of tree have unique buds? But some, like the yellow birch, which has yellowish birch-like bark that peels really easily, can be identified very quickly because of that quality. Also, some of our deciduous trees, like the red oak, will hold their leaves on into the winter. And we have a nice example of that just above me here, just behind. Another species you'll see holding its leaves into the winter months are the American beech trees. All right, what we have here on the video is a northern pintail. And northern pintails, only very few of them are seen here in Nova Scotia during the winter months. So we're quite fortunate to see this type of duck. Mallards, which are the ones with the green heads, of course, are very common in the city. And one of the things that birds look for in the wintertime that's very important to them is open water. So any place where you can find some open, fresh water, you're bound to find some interesting species. So that's one of the benefits of the little Sackville Greenway, is it has open, fresh water year-round. On the trail, this time it's a female green-winged teal. It's half the size of the mallards, and if you look closely, there's a little green patch on the side. This is a memorial that you can find along the Sackville Greenway Trail. It's to remember people that are no longer with us, to remember their struggles, and to help those that are still here as well. We'll have a moment of silence as the camera pans over some of the decorative rocks and flowers that people have placed here. All right, here we are behind the Lions Club, and we have some very obvious white birches right here. Behind us, there's maple trees, there's oak trees, and this is what we call, this is one of the 9 habitats found here along the trail. And this is what we call a mob forest. So mob stands for maple, oak, and birch. And it's a colonizing forest. So this forest is relatively short-lived. another, say 25, 50 years, this forest will be replaced by a mid-climax or climax forest. And already we can see some of the climax species starting to move in. You can see hemlock trees, you can see yellow birch. So this is probably going to end up with being a hemlock, yellow birch climax forest. So one of the neat things about identifying habitats, you can every one of them tells a story. You can kind of tell what was here before that forest started, and you can tell what's going to happen after this particular forest is gone. Other native species will hold its leaves throughout the winter. The old leaves, I should say, stay on the tree until the new ones literally push them out as they start to grow in the springtime. Just below this beech tree, we see a whole bunch of teaberry leaves growing. Teaberries, they're named that because a lot of people make tea out of them, and they have a really minty taste to them. And so both the leaves and the berries are used for tea. And sometimes people just pick a leaf and just chew on it. And if you can find one of the red berries, they're super delicious. These are Norway spruces. As the name suggests, they're not native to Nova Scotia, but they've become naturalized in a lot of spots. There's some nice rows of them here along the trail. And they're really important species. They provide home to a number of bird species. In fact, we have 3 species of cardinals that nest in the park, and one of them always nests in this patch of Norway spruce. Norway spruce in a lot of areas of the world are used as Christmas trees, and they are a very fast-growing species. So with most tree species, when they're fast-growing, they're short-lived. These guys are the exception. They're fast-growing. Their lifespan is about 300 years. So they can get quite large during that time. They're also famous for the longest cones of any spruce species in the world. And you can often find those laying here on the ground. And people gather them and collect the seeds and grow them at home. Their wood is also used as tone wood in Stradivarius violins. So they're famous for that reason as well. On the corner of Sackville Drive and Riverside, the beginning, one of the entrances, or trailheads to the Sackville Greenway Trail. We're going to point out a number of interesting species that you see along this section of the trail that you will not encounter elsewhere. So here we go. We have the long-needled Norway Pine. These are once thought of as popular Christmas trees, but they fell out of vogue because the needles made it very difficult. The long, sharp needles made it very difficult to decorate for Christmas. A native found along the trail is the Austrian Pine. Also along this section of the trail, you'll see a lot of white willows because this section is actually a floodplain. Okay, and last but not least, along this trail, this part of the trail is a multiflora rose. There's over 150 species of birds that go crazy for these rose hips. They're nice and tiny, like pea size, so easy to swallow and loaded with nutrition. These are not unique to this section of the trail. In fact, you'll find them throughout the park here or throughout the trail, and it's one of the most important species that grow here along the trail when it comes to wildlife. And right behind the KFC, you'll find this a beautiful example of a white spruce. Sometimes white spruces and red spruces can be hard to tell apart, but this is a really healthy looking one. So you can see the bluish white needles on the trees. You can also see the little white spruce cones that make it unique.